Welcome to Long Shots, the world's #1 rated golf betting show on VSiN and VSiN.com, the sports betting network. I'm Brady Kannon, along with Wes Reynolds and Nick Kenyon and Triv McKenzie are at the controls as we embark on golf is officially back week. Yes, Wes, it is here. Colonial Country Club, the site for the PGA Tour's Charles Schwab Challenge this Thursday in Fort Worth, Texas. Reunited, and it feels so good.
Absolutely, and starting out at Colonial, and with the 91-day delay, we have one of probably the best fields of the year to kick off the reboot of the 2020 PGA Tour season. Top 5 players in the world, all committed here, and all are going to tee it up at Colonial, so excited to have it back.
Yeah, it's going to be some great TV viewing. Of course, there won't be any fans at Colonial Country Club in Fort Worth, but I imagine there's going to be a lot of golf fans and casual sport fans glued to the TV with the field that we have on tap this week. As far as the show, professional bettor and handicapper friend of the network, Paul Stone, who hails from Texas, he will join us to help break down this week's event. We'll take a look at what Tiger Woods is up to currently, look ahead to this season's first major, which will be the PGA Championship coming up in August, and we'll wrap up the show with all of our plays, Wes's, mine, and our colleague Matt Humans as well for the Charles Schwab Challenge. Wes, give us a scoop on how you went about your handicap this week. You mentioned the 91-day layoff when they tee it up at Colonial on Thursday, with the last competitive round being the first round of the Players' Championship, which ended up being canceled due to the pandemic.
Yeah, this is really an interesting handicap, and even with such a strong field, it's still pretty much a crapshoot. This is actually not only the first time that the event here at Colonial has had the top 2 ranked players in the world since they've started the World Golf Rankings in 1986. They've got the top 5 in the world. But I didn't immediately go to those players because I think that creates value down the board, because with no recent form to speak of, Brady, I think that you have to rely a little bit more on course form here in these first few events. That includes next week at the RBC Heritage, the Travelers at TPC River Highlands just outside of Hartford. These next probably 3 weeks, you're going to be looking a lot more at course form because there's going to be rust. A lot of these players that live in Florida or live in Texas or jurisdictions where they could get more freely out on the golf course, they've put in practice reps, but that's not a replacement for tournament reps. So you're going to see some rust on some of these guys. So that's why I think you had to rely on kind of the old horses for courses here at Colonial.
Well, you talk about the golf course, and certainly this is an essential part of our handicapping styles, and that is looking at the skill sets that typically flourish from week to week when they change venues. What about this course, Colonial Country Club? What skill sets do you see playing out well this week? And conversely, what skill sets maybe not play out so well?
Hit the fairways and putt the lights out. That's basically the weight and the formula for success here at Colonial. Distance and power is never a disadvantage, but it's mitigated here in terms of its advantage because this is a shorter par 70 classical course, 7,200 yards. So you're not really going to necessarily overpower this course. You got very narrow fairways, on average about 27 yards in terms of width. Most tour courses you're going to get in kind of that 33 to 35 yard range in terms of fairway width. So you got to put the ball in play here because there is some danger lurking. It's not a particularly arduous or hard course. It's scoreable, but you got to keep it in play.
Yeah, putting is absolutely huge. If you look at the statistics that have been most successful over the years, let's say the last 10, 20 years at Colonial, certainly there have been some outliers, but the short game weighs heavily upon success here, scrambling and putting. And you mentioned distance off the tee, really not much of a matter how long you are here, but accuracy is a factor. Now, conversely, we have seen some long hitters win here before. Kenny Perry, Phil Mickelson, and what they did was they would cut those corners on those dog legs, and that is certainly a way to go about this. We've seen Tony Finau have success as well, but typically the shorter hitters get it done here.
Yeah, absolutely. But you look at the last 4 years in terms of strokes gained putting. Kevin Na second, Justin Rose 21st was the outlier, Kevin Kisner third, Jordan Spieth second in strokes gained putting.
This is Long Shots, the golf betting show on VSiN and VSiN.com, the sports betting network. I'm Brady Kannon along with Wes Reynolds, and we kick things off with our member guest segment. And it is indeed now time to bring in our guest. He is Mr. Paul Stone, a professional sports bettor and handicapper. You've heard what he has to say in Point Spread Weekly. You've heard him here on Long Shots, along with many other VSiN shows. Paul, welcome back to golf, my friend. How you doing?
Oh, doing well down here in Texas, and good to be with you and Wes today, and hope everything's going well in Vegas today.
Well, going well in Las Vegas, and certainly getting better in the world of golf as we have the first tournament upon us here on the reboot season. Paul, one of the obvious questions, and I certainly think it's a relevant one as well, with the 91-day layoff for both golfers and golf bettors. I think that's important to point out as well. We've been off of our game for 91 days, and tied to that. So how did you play the layoff into your handicap, and then tied to that, were you a little bit more conservative with your bets this week, or did you fire away like any normal week on tour?
I think you have to be a little bit conservative, Brady. A lot of us, certainly myself, I'm a handicapper who considers recent form and, the horse for the course dynamic, so to speak. And your recent form, like you said, we've been off almost 3 months. So any recent form that they had when we exited golf back in early March, is that still there, or is everybody, like you said, rebooting or restarting? So I consider their form, pretty significantly when the tour had to take the hiatus a couple of months ago. But it's just not as you can't consider it as significantly because you just don't know what they've been doing, how sharp their game is. A lot of turmoil in the world right now, what their mental condition is. There's just so many different variables. So I think certainly these first couple of tournaments, I know I'll be approaching it very conservatively, and I think that's probably the prudent way to do it.
Paul, we were talking before the show, before you came on here at the top of the hour, just basically about course form in terms of the fact that, like you just said, we don't have recent form because it's been a 91-day layoff. So did you, in terms of how you handicap this, or maybe some of your selections, maybe rely a little bit more on, I guess, the local angle? Because the number one city in terms of where tour players reside is kind of the Orlando, Central Florida area, but right behind it is the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So did you concentrate a lot more on the local guys there and think that they even have more of an advantage this week?
Maybe a little bit. Obviously Jordan Spieth has played quite well at Colonial, and we grew up in Dallas, 35 miles to the east, went to Jesuit High School, and he's had great success at the Charles Schwab at Colonial. But his form, the last couple of years, he's not driving the ball well below 200 in driving accuracy, and so I didn't give him quite the amount of consideration maybe I normally would because I'm just concerned about his game. And then, other guys like Scotty Scheffler, doesn't have much of a history at Colonial, but I looked at him a little bit more closely. Bryson DeChambeau also played at SMU in Dallas, but DeChambeau has not played well at Colonial. The golf course, as you guys have indicated, is more of a, favors a little bit more the medium hitters and the guys who don't hit the fairways, which DeChambeau's, a little bit down the list as far as fairway accuracy. Don't do quite as well typically, and I think he in 4 previous trips here has missed the cut 3 times. So even though those guys are local, didn't give them a whole lot of look. A couple of guys I did give a look along those lines, though. Tom Hoagie, who went to TCU, played well here in 2016, tied for 17th. I think he's a good long shot guy. And then Ryan Palmer, who's actually a member at Colonial, played collegiately at Texas A&M. Certainly he's a guy to look at this week who's got that local edge.
Paul, when you look at the golf course itself, the layout of this course, what skill sets scream out to you? You alluded to it, and Wes and I spoke about it, that it doesn't always favor the bombers. But if you get specific, what skill sets did you look at and cross those over to in some of the players where they flourish, where you might see that cream rising to the top?
Yeah, I think guys, that are, like you said, this is one of in a game that seems to really be going more and more towards favoring the long hitters, the bombers, as you said. This is a tighter course with tree-lined fairways, favors shot making, not only favors a guy who's accurate off the tee and gives that guy who's a medium hitter a little bit of a chance, but you also have to be able to maneuver the golf ball a little bit. There are a lot of dog legs and so forth. The rough, typically when they play, in May has not been that much of an issue, but with another month or so of growth, you wonder if the rough might be a little bit more of a consideration. But favors, I think, the modest hitters. Also, I think the Bombers, without fans and without grandstands, they're not going to have the benefit of maybe getting some of those lucky bounces where those errant shots come back into play. So I think the guy who can keep it in play, last year's champion Kevin Na, a great example. Guys like that, have a chance to win this week.
Paul, even though we did have this layoff, we did have at least some golf action. We, of course, had the two major made-for-TV exhibition matches, and then we had Outlaw Tour, Cactus Tour, the events down in Texas and your neck of the woods at Merido that they have. Did you really use much of that in terms of trying to find some selection this week? I personally did not, because I just don't think that the competitiveness is there like there is in a PGA Tour event. But I'm curious to see if you might have found something in those events.
I'm in absolute agreement with you, Wes. That's not competitive golf where they're playing for big money. And, it's one thing in those types of events to be over an 8-foot, 10-foot putt. It's a whole different thing in the PGA Tour. So I just didn't give it any credence at all. It just didn't. I watched it and enjoyed it, especially the Peyton Manning and that deal. That was really interesting. Tom Brady and so forth. But enjoyed watching it, but I didn't give it any play in my handicapping strategy at all.
Anything that you did differently, Paul, going into Colonial versus a normal schedule of tour events? Anything that you altered in your routine this week?
Maybe I just considered course history, the Horsesville course a little bit more than I typically would. Maybe gave it a little more of a bump just because that recent is not quite as significant since we've had the 3-month layoff. So, look at guys who've played well here versus guys who maybe haven't played as well. But that was probably the only change. I think it's difficult to quantify how the lack of fans is going to play into it. To me, it might have some impact, but to know what that impact is beforehand is very difficult. So that's probably the only really change that I did in my handicapping process, other than approach it a little more conservatively just based on some of the unknowns that we're facing.
He is Paul Stone, professional bettor and professional handicapper. You can see him and hear him often here on VSiN, and follow him on Twitter at Paul Stone Sports. Let's get to some head-to-head matchups this week, Paul. Not a huge list of matchups I've seen around town at various books, but certainly some tasty-looking ones. What caught your eye as far as the full tournament head-to-head matchups, Paul?
Well, I'm going to give you 3 if I can. Starting off, I've got Kevin Na plus 104 over Victor Hovland. You've got Na, obviously the defending champion here, won last year by 4 strokes, finished 4th in 2018. So the last 2 editions of this tournament, 27 under par at Colonial Country Club. Hovland not playing quite as well. He did win the Puerto Rico Open in late February against a lesser field, but in his 4 other PGA events this year, missed 2 cuts and has a tied for 42nd, tied for 38th. So I've got Na plus 104 over Hovland. Also played Webb Simpson at even, plus 100 over Bryson DeChambeau. Simpson is a guy who was 5th here in 2017, finished tied for 3rd in 2016. Won at Phoenix this year, earlier in February, and then a couple weeks before that, he had finished 3rd at the Sony Open. So I think he's a guy who's going to have a great 2020 the rest of the way. And again, we've talked about Bryson a little bit, but even though he was one of the hottest players in the game, without doubt, when we left us in March and went on the break due to the pandemic, he just hadn't played well at Colonial. It clearly has not suited his game to date. Again, as I mentioned, he's missed 3 cuts and 4 trips here. He's averaged 70.8 strokes per round, average of about 1 over par his 10 previous rounds here. So don't really like his chances. So played Simpson at even over DeChambeau. And then I played Matt Kuchar at minus 106 over Matthew Fitzpatrick. Kuchar's played well at Colonial, finished 2nd here in 2013. He's had 3 top 10s in this event. In his last 6 tournaments this year, 3 top 16 finishes, so he had good form when we quit playing back in March. And then Fitzpatrick, I think it was his debut last year at Colonial, but he tied for 64th last year. only ranks 84th in driving accuracy, which I think is critical this week. Played 4 tournaments in the States, has Fitzpatrick so far this calendar year. Only has one finish better than 30th place. So I like Kuchar at minus 106 over Matthew Fitzpatrick.
And I found it interesting, Paul, you did mention Bryson DeChambeau, who I'm long on in terms of I think that he's going to win a big one at some point this season because the driving distance, certainly he is now number one and he's recommitted himself to the length part of the game. But like you said, this is not a course where you can really overpower. It's a shorter, tighter course. Any other players that maybe you're looking to be kind of skirting or maybe fading this week?
Other than Spieth, I have not played the matchup. The main matchup I see out there is Justin Rose, and I think the price is up to about minus 160. And, I would like to fade Spieth, but Rose, talking about his recent form, even though it's a few months old, he was playing at almost a historic poor level in about the previous 4 or 5 tournaments. So I passed on that, but really DeChambeau comes to mind, and Spieth. Those are the main guys. Bubba Watson would be a guy, too, that I might look at fading. Hadn't played here in a real long time. I don't know that the course favors his skill set either.
Yeah, I'm with you on Bubba Watson, Paul. I was speaking about that earlier in the week. Oftentimes, Colonial will be compared to a U.S. Open type setup with the dog legs, the narrow fairways that Wes mentioned. And, the U.S. Open is a major that I always like to fade Bubba in. You're backing him at Augusta and going against him at a U.S. Open. I saw the head-to-head matchup there, Bubba against Russell Knox, but Knox is all the way to as high as minus 145. That was just a little bit rich for my blood to pull the trigger on.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Knox was a guy. I don't think Knox was playing particularly well when we had the break as well. So I looked at that a little bit, but just couldn't quite pull the trigger. And like you said, you got to look at prices. You just can't play it, play a player blindly against someone else without thinking about the price that you're paying. So certainly passed on that for now.
Paul, usually this time of year we're getting ready for major championship play, that being the U.S. Open in mid-June, but this time they got to make us wait a little bit with the changes in the schedule, so we've got about a month and a half, a little less than 2 months before we get to major championship play, but currently scheduled in early August out at Harding Park in San Francisco for the PGA Championship. Have you done any early handicapping for that, or any players you're maybe looking to see that you might want to bet for that event?
I've looked at it just briefly, and interestingly, they played a few events out there, starting with in 2005, played the WGC Amex Championship that Tiger Woods won, defeated John Daly on the 3rd hole of a sudden death playoff. And then looking at Tiger a few years after that, I think 4 years after that, in 2009, they played the President's Cup at Harding Park. Woods recorded a 5-0 match play record to lead the victorious U.S. squad. And Tiger obviously played at Stanford, just a little bit south of San Francisco there in Palo Alto. So Tiger might have a little home course advantage there, so to speak. And then you look at the 2015, they had a match play event, WGC Cadillac match play event there in 2015. That was won by Rory McIlroy, defeated 2019 U.S. champ Gary Woodland in the final in that match play event. So, just kind of looking at it at a very moderate level so far, but Woods, McIlroy, and even Gary Woodland have some success there, and they'll pique my interest. So really looking forward to that, and hopefully the schedule will go off as they've rescheduled the events and have a new schedule. Hopefully everything will happen as planned now.
Yeah, Paul, you mentioned Gary Woodland. He won on a similar type of course, similar location, Pebble Beach, just last year for the U.S. Open. Similar green putting surface there as Harding Park, so I was taking a look at him as well. You mentioned Tiger Woods. For the PGA Championship, there are some odds to win the major tournament coming up in August, already up around town and elsewhere. I'm seeing Tiger anywhere from 16 to 22 to 1. In the neighborhood of 20 to 1, would that be enough for you to bite on the big cat?
It might be, but Tiger's always going to be, in my mind, a little bit overpriced just because there's such a, infatuation with him. He's such a fan favorite, and he's just a guy that you always feel, or most people anyway, feel like he's on the verge of winning, and they just want to support. So he's kind of a guy that I almost mark off my list every tournament. You probably shouldn't do that, but I just think he's going to be overpriced. But with the history that he has there, 20-1 might be a pretty fair price to look at Tiger there.
Yeah, you're right, Paul. It's really hard to find good value on Tiger Woods. That's how good he is. That's how popular he is. Well, thanks so much for a few minutes of your time today. Enjoy the Colonial. Golf is back. We're all excited about that, and we'll catch up with you down the road.
Good luck to all you guys, and hope everybody has a great tournament there in Fort Worth this week.
Thanks, Paul. You too.
That is Paul Stone, professional bettor and professional handicapper, great at college football as well, and appears on our panel of selections in Point Spread Weekly for college football.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that we're going to get a season for college football, and I know once that is going to materialize, Paul's going to make his way out to Vegas, and we always, of course, like seeing him in person. Yeah,
former Golden Nugget football contest winner, and I know he's finished top 10 at least a couple of times as well. And, it was a few years ago that I discovered Paul is very astute in golf handicapping as well. So a pleasure to have him on. Appreciate his thoughts. We're talking about Tiger Woods, his chances at the PGA Championship. We'll talk more Tiger coming up next right here on Long Shots. Quick Picks, the real money parlay props game based on daily fantasy scoring. VEASAN customers can play Quick Picks through this special offer. Get a 100% automatic deposit bonus up to $100 when you sign up for a new Quick Picks account. Sign up now at quickpicks.com/VEASAN bonus. Then select who you think will finish with the higher fantasy point totals. Go to quickpicks.com/VEASAN bonus and start playing Quick Picks now. It is indeed our Tiger Tracker segment. Wes Reynolds and Brady Kannon with you on Long Shots. We take a look at the big cat, see what the latest is with Tiger Woods. And Wes, the latest is, I saw this yesterday, there are actually odds up now in some places as to which event will be selected as Tiger's first return to action. And next week, the RBC Heritage at Hilton Head in South Carolina is the favorite. So your opinion, will Tiger show up next week? The favorite where he will make his return.
Yeah, and if that is still bettable, you may want to get on that because the Tiger Woods yacht is in motion. The yacht being named Privacy, ironically enough. Privacy Tiger Woods yacht is headed towards St. Simons, Georgia. Apparently, from seeing the reports of the Twitterverse. Not always to be believed, but I think where there's some smoke, there's some fire here. And it looks like you may be seeing him at Harbor Town next week at Hilton Head for the RBC Heritage. If you do, in fact, see him there, 1999 was the last time he has played this event. So a 20-year absence, and I'm sure the organizers down there in South Carolina are very happy to have him.
Great golf course, and it's a shame that Tiger hasn't played it more often. It is one of the best courses on tour. Usually follows the Masters, where they make the trip from Augusta down to Hilton Head, South Carolina. Tiger has not teed it up since the Genesis Open in Los Angeles at Riviera in mid-February. You and I, Wes, we talk a lot about course form and current form, and Tiger really has neither of the two if he's to tee it up next week. As far as current form, we saw him at the Medalist Club in the exhibition match with Peyton Manning against Mickelson and Brady, and you mentioned it. As far as course form, he's played there one time in the last 20 years. He finished 18th, shot 4 under par, so nothing really to go off of Tiger as far as handicapping him next week.
Yeah, exactly. But one thing I will say, I did like what we saw, and we watched the match with Tiger and Phil and Peyton Manning and Tom Brady in the same place, and commented how good he looked. I thought he looked pretty darn good for a guy that's had layoff and was pulling out of tournaments with his back injury. And one of the things I noticed about him, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, he looked thin. Like, he did not look like the big, bulky. He's obviously in shape and keeps himself in good physical condition, but he did not look like the big, bulky Tiger. He looked like a U.S. amateur Tiger in like 96 or 97. I mean, that's
he's
really
fading
how he
DeChambeau
looked.
as well.
Yes, exactly. I just think that he looked. I don't know if he's doing something different in terms of his physical training or his weight training, and maybe it was deceiving because I saw the picture with him and Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady and Peyton Manning at the end of the round with the big check for the COVID-19 donations relief, and obviously those are three very big guys, Phil,
right.
Tom, and Peyton Manning. So they're going to make Tiger look smaller maybe than normal, but he did look very thin. He did not look like that bulky, strapping Tiger that we're used to seeing.
I think his legs have always been a little bit skinnier too, and of course that day he was wearing shorts, right? So you're used to seeing him in pants, but you're right. The shoulders, it looked a little bit scaled down, and maybe that's just not as much practice, not as much workout. We will see, but he hit every fairway that day in that match. So apparently, whatever he is doing, it worked out. Including Colonial West, there are 9 events between now and the PGA Championship, and obviously Tiger's going to play in the first major of the year, you would assume, barring injury, we hope. How many events do you think Tiger will play in between now and then?
I got to think he definitely plays at the Memorial. In terms of the updates that you might have seen that graphic of where we will see him next, it's not an official date, but that July 9th to July 12th is no longer the John Deere Classic that has been canceled, but it looks like it's going to be sponsored by Workday. You're going to have an event in Columbus, so you're going to have back-to-back weeks in Dublin, Ohio at Muirfield Village, Memorial being the second week. So maybe he plays back-to-back in Columbus. I think if he's playing the Heritage, he's not going to be playing the Travelers, and he's not going to be playing the Rocket Mortgage in Detroit.
Yeah, if I had to guess right now, let's say Heritage is going to be the first tournament where he will be back. I agree with you. He'll skip a couple and then probably play both weeks in Ohio. And then the week before the PGA Championship is the WGC FedEx, I believe, in Memphis.
He may skip that.
You think so?
He may skip that.
Well, he typically doesn't play the week before a major, does he?
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll talk more on Tiger Tracker on the next edition of Long Shots. We'll be back and talk about that PGA Championship next on Major Implications right here on VSiN and VSiN.com. A course that rates the highest in each factor is Bali High Golf Club, a tropical golf course paradise located on the Las Vegas Strip and in the shadows of some of the most famous hotels in the world. At Bali High, designed by award-winning architects Brian Schmidt and Lee Curley, you will find hundreds of mature palm trees, lagoon-like water features, beautiful bunkering, and a stunning clubhouse home to Sealy Restaurant and an indoor-outdoor patio experience and event space. The course offers Bluetooth technology, caddies upon request, Jello shots, model-like beverage cart staff, VIP service from curb to course and back again, high-quality food and beverage, and a par 3 challenge where you can double your money with one swing. The stunning Bali High Golf Club, located in the heart of the Las Vegas Strip, is a golf jackpot, and there are many reasons why. Play today. To learn more about the Bali High experience or reserve your tee time, call 702-450-8000 or visit BaliHighGolfClub.com. That's BALIHAI golfclub.com. And it is time for our Major Implications segment. It used to be the final major of the season, Glory's last shot. It moved to the second major of the season last year with the reworking of the PGA Tour schedule. And now, due to the circumstances of 2020, it's the first major of the year. It's the PGA Championship. It will be held August 6th at Harding Park in San Francisco. And Wes, last week we threw a few names out there that caught our eye. Jordan Spieth at 50-1, Paul Casey at 60-1, and Jason Day Day and Webb Simpson both at 40-1. Any futures that you already have in pocket or looking at now for the PGA?
I am likely going to bet Paul Casey, and I think that's another one you like as well. And he's somewhere in that 50, maybe even 60-1 range, depending on what book you shop at. So he's a guy that we mentioned last week why we like him. Another guy I'm going to be looking at in terms of form, because he probably hasn't had a lot of reps during the pandemic, being that he's based in Southern California. But a guy, look, knocking on the door for a major, and that's Xander Schauffele at 25-1. He may not win right away in his return to the tour because he needs to get some kinks out and just needs to get some tournament reps. But I'm really going to like him, I think, in this event. Of course, last year, tied for second at Augusta, tied for third at the U.S. Open in Pebble Beach. Year before, he was tied for second in the Open Championship, tied for sixth at the U.S. Open. So this is a guy just in 3 years with 5 top 6 finishes in majors. So he's going to get one pretty soon. He's just, I think, got the game and too talented not to.
That's really impressive. What'd you say, 5 years? Or
in the last 3 years, 2017 to 2019, he has got 5 top 6 finishes in the majors.
Wow, that's
he was
incredible.
tied for 5th at the 2017 U.S. Open. So very young player and already contending in majors. Keep in mind, this guy's only 26 years old. So he's got the game. I know that's one of Matt Humans' favorite guys out there, and he bets him quite frequently throughout the season. So he's going to be a guy in terms of the shorter price guys that I'm going to be looking at. And I mean, there's some guys I want to observe here too, Brady. I want to observe Bryson DeChambeau, who I was betting a lot kind of pre-pandemic, and I think he had like 3 top 5 finishes right in a row. So I really liked him for the players. And he's made a commitment to the gym, made a commitment to lengthening his game. He's number 1 in driving distance, one of the top guys in strokes gained off the tee. So DeChambeau's a guy I'm going to want to look at. I don't think you may see him struggle a little bit out of the gate here in the return, but he could be peaking come major time.
Yeah, I took a harder look at the PGA Championship this week in preparation for our show, and I took a look at Dustin Johnson. And you talk about some of the shorter odds guys, Xander Schauffele at around 25-1, DJ at 14-1. I also looked at Gary Woodland, who was a guy Paul Stone mentioned, at 60-1. And the reason I looked at DJ, I mean, he's always a contender, top 5 player in the world here, but Harding Park is a bent grass Poa annua green surface blend, and we see that both at Riviera and Chapultepec in Mexico City. Dustin Johnson has won at both of those courses, and he's also won at Pebble Beach. As far as location and climate, it is similar. It's not a Poa annua bent grass blend, but solely Poa annua down there at Pebble. But I think all those things kind of add up to make Dustin Johnson a candidate. This course should really suit him.
Yeah, and you mentioned, and I was looking at a stat this week, in something I read every week in terms of winners on certain putting services. The guys that have won on bent grass the most over the last decade, Rory McIlroy, obviously, and McIlroy has won on this course before at the match play several years ago. So McIlroy is more than likely going to be the favorite for this event, even as we get closer. But DJ's won a lot. I think he's won 4 times since 2008 on bent grass greens. Webb Simpson is another guy. Justin Thomas, Bryson DeChambeau. These are guys that have all won relatively frequently on this surface. So that's a good angle that you mentioned there.
Keep in mind, though, you want to look at guys that are successful on Poa annua, too, because it's a Poa annua bent blend, and just pure bent is much different than anything that has an influence of Poa annua. We know Poa annua is a spongy, bumpy surface that we see typically on coastal venues, Torrey Pines, Pebble Beach, and Harding Park, like Riviera, will be a bent grass Poa annua blend. Bubba Watson has had great success at Riviera. Woodland, of course, finished second here to Rory McIlroy in 2015 at the match play, won the U.S. Open not far down the road at Pebble Beach, a solely Poa annua green surface. And then finally, Wes, this one caught my eye. Paul Stone earlier mentioned the 2005 Amex WGC that Tiger won in a playoff over John Daly. Well, you know who was next on the leaderboard? Sergio Garcia. All this guy's done at Chapultepec in Mexico is finished 6th, 7th, and 12th. He finished 3rd in 2005 at Harding Park, and he is 100-1 to win the PGA at Westgate. Might be time for this guy to bag another major.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. I think that's a good call. And Sergio,
he's done well at Riviera, too.
Yeah, and because he's kind of been a little erratic with his form, you're getting a really good price there. So, and you mentioned Gary Woodland. Gary Woodland was a semifinalist in that match play event that I mentioned earlier. He lost, or actually, no, he was a finalist. He beat Danny Willett and then lost in the final to Rory McIlroy. So Woodland, and we had mentioned Paul Casey. He was a quarterfinalist in that event. Tommy Fleetwood was in the quarterfinals of that event as well. Now, Fleetwood, I'm not sure what he's going to do with his schedule yet because he's not committed to play this week. Some of these Europeans may be staying in Europe for that little swing that they're doing in England and Wales before the PGA as well.
If you look at the winners at Harding Park, it seems to be more ball striker type guys, not necessarily bombers, but guys that are really crisp with their iron play. And, of course, Rory McIlroy and Tiger Woods are about as good as it gets in every aspect of the game. Matt Youmans has 2 plays currently for the PGA Championship. Jordan Spieth at 50-1 and Webb Simpson at 40-1. And then, of course, our guest Paul Stone earlier talking about the 3 guys we've mentioned, Tiger, Woodland, and Rory. Not a bad 3-ball right there. Tiger, Woodland, and Rory going into Harding Park.
Yeah, absolutely. All 3 of those certainly could win.
We're going to get to the match play segment next and deliver our plays for Colonial as the PGA Tour returns this week in Fort Worth, Texas. Keep it right here on Long Shots. High atop the hills of the Las Vegas Valley sits the picturesque Revere Golf Club, featuring 36 championship holes, a full practice facility, and a 30,000-square-foot clubhouse with a stunning view of the Las Vegas Strip. Traversing through a desert and canyon landscape, the Lexington and Concord courses feature lush fairways and perfectly manicured greens with panoramic views from nearly every tee box. Prices range from just $45 to $169 per player, or build your perfect day with a rental club or drive and dine package, or play both courses with our signature 36-hole double down package. Go to reveregolf.com and use promo code VSIN to receive 25% off all rates and packages. Again, use promo code VSIN and receive 25% off rates and packages at reveregolf.com. It is the match play and final segment of the program where we give out our plays for the upcoming PGA Tour tournament. And, of course, that is the Charles Schwab Challenge at Colonial Country Club in Fort Worth, Texas. And we start with our colleague Matt Youmans. His plays for the Charles Schwab Challenge, the futures to win the tournament. Justin Thomas, he went up higher on the board there. He is one of the pre-tournament favorites. Rory McIlroy is your lowest choice. Thomas at 17-1. Youmans is going to back him, and I think part of the reasoning there is how typically well Thomas starts off a season. We've seen him win in Hawaii, and this is kind of like the restart of a season here. Bryson DeChambeau at 28-1. One of the guys Paul Stone is fading in 4 trips to Colonial. He's missed the cut 3 times, and DeChambeau is at 28-1. Tony Finau, another one of Youmans' selections who has had very good success here in the past at Colonial and just a few visits. And then finally, Jordan Spieth, maybe the most controversial selection. He's had great history here at Colonial, but in a real slump for really the better part of 3 years. We'll see how Spieth can do in his return to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, of course, where he grew up and went to college. As far as the head-to-head matchups for Mr. Youmans, he's got Matt Kuchar at -125 over Matthew Fitzpatrick. He is lined up there with Paul Stone on that one. And then he goes back to Jordan Spieth with a head-to-head matchup over Justin Rose, and Spieth the underdog in this one. Youmans catching +115.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jordan Spieth, and that could transition into mine. I'm also on Jordan Spieth this week, and look, shop around for numbers, mid-40, 50, some to 1 range, so that's where you want to look. One thing about Spieth is not only his success here, 8th or better in 5 of 7 appearances, including a win and 2 runners-up. Never has missed a cut here at Colonial. Layoff could have done him some good. His coach, Cam McCormick, is based at the Old American Golf Club in Colony, Texas, which is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So he's done a lot of work with his coach, and I think that that'll serve him well. Top player in overall strokes gained per round over the last 10 years, caveat being the minimum of 10 rounds. That would be Jordan Spieth, 2.4 strokes gained per round. So he was one of my top selections. Matt Kuchar, I think it's a big price, and he comes in with a good frame of mind. He's got some top 10s here, runner-up in 2013. He usually starts the season off pretty solid off a layoff, and obviously next week at Hilton Head, that's one of his best courses for the RBC Heritage. So I think he's in a really good frame of mind. He's got a lot of experience here. He's, I believe, made 11 appearances at Colonial, which leads me to the next guy who has the most logged tournament rounds of any player in the field at Colonial. As Paul Stone mentioned earlier, he is a member. That would be Ryan Palmer, who resides in Colleyville, Texas, which is a suburb of Fort Worth. Played his college golf at Texas A&M in College Station, so nearby. Palmer's got 56 total tournament rounds here, 4 top 6s in his last 8 appearances, shot all 4 rounds in the 60s last year and finishing tied for 6th. Don't forget, he finished tied for 4th in Hawaii earlier this year at the Sony. He was also in the final group on Sunday at the Farmers Insurance Open. I know Matt Humans and I both had him.
I remember that.
A disappointing T21 because he shot 77. He was in the final group with Rory McIlroy and Jon Rahm, number 1 and number 2 in the world. So, but look, this is course experience. He's going to know the sight lines off the tee, knowing when and where to attack, when he's got to play it safe. Harris English, another guy whose form kind of turned around, also got him at 70-1. Solid record here at Colonial. Has made 5 of 6 cuts. Was runner-up in 2016, where he ran into the Jordan Spieth of old.
Yep.
The Jordan Spieth, the year before, who had won 2 majors, both at the Masters and U.S. Open. So English played well enough to win that event. Unfortunately, didn't get it done, but has really played solid. Had 4 top 6 finishes dating back to the PGA Tour Fall Series, and then you see that strokes gained at Colonial graphic. Harris English right there in the top 10 for that graphic. So Abraham Answer, 80-1. That was a little bit more of a speculative play. He's in the top 30 in the world right now. Kind of pedestrian here in 2 appearances. Made the cut, but finished in like the 50 range. But just some good price value here. Kevin Kisner loves this type of course. Par 70, tight layout, plays very well. Look for him maybe at the RBC next week, too. He's a South Carolina native, so that'd be a guy to keep an eye on. He's got a victory here, a top 5 and a top 10, respectively. So 90-1, I thought that was a big price. Tom Hoagie, Paul Stone stole my thunder a little bit. He played his collegiate golf at TCU right there in Fort Worth. Very familiar. I've played him a couple times already this year in the West Coast Swing. He's playing arguably the best and the most consistent golf of his career. 2 top 6 finishes, 4 top 15s just in 2020 with the limited amount of events due to the pandemic. So Hogue at 145 is a long shot. Duffner was kind of a shot in the dark. 2 runner-up finishes here. I think he at least knows the course. He could maybe finish up high. And then real quick on the matchups, because I want to give you time, Brady. I did take Schauffele in his matchups. That was kind of just more of a fade of DJ and a little bit of Sungjae Im, because I'm not sure what Sungjae Im is going to know what to do with himself, considering he hadn't played in 3 months, and he plays damn near every single week on the PGA Tour. So I'm not sure what he's how he's going to start out. Morikawa over Tony Finau was another matchup, and then Kuchar over Rose. Rose just has not been in that good of a form, and I think Kuchar, even though Rose has won here before, Kuchar is more of a horse for course here, so those were my matchup selections.
Yeah, and I took 4 plays in the futures market, went with a shorter favorite, a couple of mid-range, and then a long shot. My one towards the top of the board was Jon Rahm. In 3 appearances here, he has 2 top 5 finishes. Rory McIlroy certainly looks like the best player in the world. There's a reason Jon Rahm is number 2. He's that good. I also took a shot with Xander Schauffele at 28-1, just going off of the theory that he's great to start the season. He won 2 years ago at Kapalua Kapalua in Hawaii and then lost in a playoff this year. So he comes out of the gate hot. You make the statement that he hasn't had much time to practice in California. That's certainly a deterrent. But if he's getting off to a hot start again to start this reboot, if you will, I like his chances here. Very good putter, good ball striker. And then I'm on Kuchar. I don't think you had him for a future, but you have him in a match.
Yeah, I've got him for a future.
You do? Okay, you've got him. I found him at 71-1 at Circa. I just felt that price was way too high. He's been here 11 times, as you mentioned. He's finished in the top 10 3 times, and he's got that very favorable spot next week at the Heritage. And Kuchar, another guy that starts out a new season very well. We've seen him have success in Hawaii and Phoenix. Rory Sabatini was my big long shot.
I like your angle here. I almost used him.
Been here 19 times, finished top 10 5 times. He's won it before. Got him at 200-1 at Circa. I don't know if this guy is going to win the thing, but I think he certainly has a shot. This is a course where you need experience. It's similar to Augusta in the fact that it's one of the longest running tour events to be held at the same venue. It's also similar to Augusta where you need to log some experience here. Obviously, Rory Sabatini has that in spades.
Two interesting nuggets on Sabatini here. I mentioned in terms of logging tournament rounds, and we had that graphic up earlier, Ryan Palmer being number 1. Number 2, along with Zach Johnson, Rory Sabatini's got 52 career tournament rounds here and has had some really good finishes. And also, I'm going to be interested to see Sabatini's mindset, because one of the big stories around him is that he actually reclassified. He's married to a woman from Slovakia and redid his citizenship to be a Slovakian citizen. He's from South Africa, to be able to represent them in the Olympics this summer for golf, which we are now not having in Tokyo. That'll be next year in 2021. So now that's all kind of out of his mind. And he's had a little bit of time with this pandemic to get over the disappointment of not being able to do that. So you may see him come out and fire here. I don't dislike that play at all. I think that's worth a nibble at least.
And those two reside in South Florida, so he's certainly had time and availability to practice. Matt Kuchar is in Georgia. He's had ability to practice. And, of course, John Rahm in Arizona. The golf courses have been open there. Xander Schauffele, really the only guy that may not have logged as many practice hours as the rest of my future plays. As far as the full tournament head-to-head matchups, I took Jason Day over Louis Oosthuizen. Day has been practicing and performing very well in his native Australia. He's obviously had time to recover from his injury problems that he seems to have quite often. Like Tiger Woods, I believe the layoff will do very well for Jason Day. Tremendous short game. That's one of the biggest things here at Colonial. Chipping and putting. Not many better in the world than Jason Day. Oosthuizen has had some success here as well, but I think if push comes to shove, Day, when healthy, is the better player there. He's at a pick'em at -110. And then Sabatini, I went back to the well with him, also at -110 over Ryan Moore. Ryan Moore, you would think, is a type of player that fits this venue. He's been here 8 times. He has never finished top 10. I believe his best finish was 26.
Very similar to Lucas Glover, who has a ton of rounds here, but just has never achieved the success. But look, they like the course, I guess, but they haven't shown the results, certainly.
I also think we should make the statement, Wes, that coming back to the PGA Tour here, they've had 91 days off from playing. We've had 91 days off from betting. I would be very conservative with this stuff. Don't go crazy. Let a few weeks go by.
And don't get discouraged if you get a bunch of guys miss the cut on the future sport. Because
I mean, take a few shots, have some fun, but this is probably more of an educational week than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to kind of at least get a gauge. You won't be able to do like recent form until they get 3 or 4 tournaments under their belt here come July.
Next week, we dive into the RBC Heritage from Hilton Head, South Carolina. Longtime golf professional and handicapper from North Carolina, Ryan Brickley, will be back to join us, a multi-time long shots guest to help us break down the action from Hilton Head. We'll talk to you next time right here on VSiN.